Okay, so who do we have the pleasure of sitting down with today?
My name is Kevin Jesse.
Okay, Kevin. Where were you born and when were you born?
I was born December 7th, 1970, Washington, D.C.
Okay.
Right near Georgetown.
Okay, representing. Okay, so and where did you grew up in the DMV area?
I was born in Washington, D.C., but I lived in Maryland my whole life.
Okay. So how was your childhood there?
I had a great childhood. I never met my father. I had my mother and my grandmother who raised me. I had a sister. I had a great childhood. I never felt that I missed anything because I didn't have a father, because I didn't know what that was like. You know, my mother was married 4 times, you know, and a couple of them tried to play dad. But in the end, my mother was always partial to me. I was always going to win any argument. So the husbands didn't really get a fair shake in the deal. You know, I was my mother's first child. She was very young when she had me, but I was loved, you know, by my mother and my grandmother, you know, as much as you could be. Now, I thought everybody grew up that way. That was not the case, which I'll find out later when I get married. So.
Okay. That's cool. So, how was school for you as a kid?
School for me was more like Facebook today. I didn't push myself. I didn't really care about, you know, oh man, I need straight A's and I've got to learn this and I've got to learn that. School was a social experience for me. I loved school. You know, that's where, you know, oh man, the girls are at school. I can't miss school today, you know. I always enjoyed school for the social aspect of it. You know, I was very friendly, open with people. I wasn't like the shy guy. I was always the class clown for sure. So yeah, school was great for me, but I definitely didn't apply myself.
Okay, and as far as dreams and ambitions, what was that like for you as a kid?
Well, I'll be honest. My whole thing, all I cared about was watching the Redskins. You know, I had season tickets as a young child, thanks to my grandfather. That's all I cared about, man, was the Washington Redskins. Yeah, I mean, my whole life was basically about football. Me and my grandfather used to sports bet. So that was our big thing. If you know, on the Sundays when the Redskins played, we were at the stadium. We never missed a game. If they were away, we'd be in front of the television watching every game, and my grandfather would have all the sports cards and the point spreads. And, you know, by the time I'm 7 years old, man, I knew exactly how to place bets and, you know, what point spreads. I knew it all in terms of that. And I would gamble for, you know, a quarter or something like that. So that was my first, I don't want to use drug, if you will. That extra excitement to bet a quarter or 50 cents on this game because I'm getting action now. I always wanted excitement. Unfortunately for me, it was never enough, which will go downhill later with.
Cool. So did you graduate high school?
I graduated high school. I really had no drive to go to college. You know, we were part of the popular crowd in high school. And in the late 80s, you know, we were into the drinking and smoking a lot of marijuana and, you know, dabbling a little in cocaine because, oh man, we got cocaine. It's so exciting, you know. It was such an expensive drug. We thought, man, this is great. Of course, back then, cocaine was considered high class, if you will. I mean, I was a drug addict before I was a drug addict. My uncle, who was my idol, was a hardcore cocaine addict, freebasing cocaine by 1982. The first thing I ever did when I was 13 years old, he showed up one night, came straight from Daytona Beach. I had never had a drink, marijuana, anything at this point. He comes to my house in the middle of the night and he's got this huge bag of cocaine. Came straight from Daytona Beach. The first thing I ever hit was freebase cocaine before I even snort. And but about 6 months before that, he brought me the movie Scarface. You know, once again, I was one of these very fortunate kids that had everything. You know, I remember our first CD player. It was $800 in like 84, 85, and every CD was $50. Well, that was a hell of a lot of money back then. But you know, I had 2 VHS players, and back then you didn't buy movies, you rented them. So I would record every one of them. When he brought me the movie Scarface and Mad Max, and I watched Scarface every day. So I was excited to be a drug addict before I ever even tried drugs. I didn't realize, and I was too young to know, what an effect that would have later on down the road.
Okay, so what's the age difference between you and your uncle?
I'm currently 55. My uncle, unfortunately, in the last year just passed away. He was 65, so it was about a 10 year difference.
Right, that's why I asked, because the way you describe your relationship with him, he seems more of a big brother to you.
Yeah, he was my 2 uncles. My family was, I came from a family that once had wealth. This is a funny story. My great-grandfather made the first donut. Back during the Depression, donuts, churros here, were solid. Well, in an effort to make more dough, he punched a hole and made the first donut. He did a few other things during the Depression that made him very, very wealthy. He had no one had money during the Depression, obviously. He came up with the idea with all the construction sites that he would sell lunch tokens. He'd go on payday, sell them, you know, a week's worth of lunch tokens when they got paid, because of course by Monday everyone's broke. This way they could eat all week. Revolutionary idea at the time. And his wife would make the lunches and he'd deliver them. Made a fortune during the Depression because of that. He also, I believe he was in the Guinness Book of World Records. I don't know if I'm gonna get this correct, but he owned the most golf courses. He either didn't play or didn't know how to play. It was one of the two. It was one of those two. Very smart man, made a lot of money. A lot of money is not the gift everyone thinks. So my uncle, I had 3 uncles, but 2 of them I absolutely adored. You know, they were, 5, 10 years older than me, good-looking guys. They had the sports cars. They had the women, So to me, man, that's my idol. I want to be them. And like I say, at the time, drugs were not looked at as they would later. This is before crack and, before the inner cities got really tore up with cocaine or anything. And like I say, I was from the country. I never lived in the city. I was born there, but never lived there. So, but yeah, my uncle was definitely my idol. And despite the fact that he gave me drugs at a very young age, which definitely set me on the wrong course, if he told me to jump off the bridge, I would have done it. So, but I never held any ill will towards him. I loved him very much. Funniest guy you'd ever meet. Which was hiding a lot of his pain, which will also be part of my story later. So, but I loved my childhood. Everything was perfect. Like I say, we were the popular crowd in high school. High school was everything. I had the brand new car when I was, I had like one of those super sweet 16s you see on MTV, in 1986. My mother rents this big Moose Lodge and has all these bands, and every person in school is invited. And I actually already had a car when I was 15. The Smokey and the Bandit Trans Am, the 78 Trans Am, the black one, was my mother bought for me when I was 15. I couldn't drive it, but my girlfriend was 17, so she could. But on my 16th birthday, she got me a new one and opened these doors with, 500 kids in school, and boom, here's this brand new sports car. And, I thought everything was great. We had a beautiful home, you know, the pool. We just did what we wanted. I was very much into the rock and roll of the 80s, which was more the hair bands, you know, the glam bands, you know, the Motley Crues, the Poisons, all that good stuff. Going to concerts was my other vice, other than the Redskins. And my friend Jay, who unfortunately passes away very shortly, we did everything together. We both played drums. Now, everyone wanted to be a rock star then. I sucked at the drums. But my uncle, the one I told you about, bought me this beautiful, very expensive drum set. I never took a lesson. I didn't know how to read music, but he buys me this beautiful drum set. And how my mother and sister put up with that racket I must have made. I'd put on headphones, listening to, you know, like Iron Maiden and Motley Crue, my favorite bands, and try to play along. And I was horrible on drums. I was horrible. But to me, man, it felt really good. Well, my friend Jay also played drums, and he was much better than myself. He was in bands. I never was. Me and him did everything together. Like I said, concerts was, we'd go to the Capitol Center in Landover, Maryland. Man, that was the spot. And back then, everybody toured a lot. So there was always concerts, and we didn't miss any of the rock shows. So once again, everything's perfect in my life. My mother gives me everything I asked for. I was an absolute spoiled brat. She did everything she could to make me happy, but I always wanted more. I always wanted more. And that still has never stopped. A week before my 17th birthday, my friend, who we never were apart, as I say, he played in a band. And on this day, it was raining very, very hard. I went to pick him up from band practice, and he wanted to stay a little longer. So he said, you know, I'll get a ride. Because he was actually staying with me at the time. His family, his mother was having some issues. Anyway, long story short, he gets in a car with somebody he doesn't know. The boy had just gotten his license. I was driving home doing 30 miles an hour, couldn't see. An hour later, this kid's doing 110 miles an hour. He just got his license. Car slides off the road. My best friend dies in this car accident. And then life changes for me. Up to that point, everything felt perfect. But now, all of a sudden, my best friend's gone. And being the spoiled brat that I was, I'm mad. I'm angry. So I was never really brought up with much religion. I believed in something bigger, and I do now. But at that point, I'm angry. There's nothing bigger. It's terrible. And being the spoiled brat that I was, that's when my life turned dark. I wanted it to turn dark because I was so angry. I was very immature for my age. You know, I never really had to do anything for myself because everything was just handed to me. You know, looking back, and I don't know if I would have changed anything. You know, the 80s, it was just that perfect time for music and movies and drugs and women, and everything was happy. You know, like I say, but when my friend died, that really, really changed. That was my senior year of high school. There was a big void in my life now. You know, I didn't have another concert partner like him, you know, and I remember right after he died, the next two concerts I went, one solo, and it just wasn't the same. I mean, I still love concerts to this day. It's still one of my favorite things. But yeah, everything changed after that, and I wouldn't let it go. I mean, every day, even now, I mean, we're talking 40 years later, it still affects me. I'll find out later why I stayed that way. Apparently, when someone dies, I didn't understand death. There's a few stages you're going through, you know, like the mourning and the recovery, and I was stuck. in the shock in the morning of it. I wouldn't let it go. You know, like every day it was like, you know, here I am, the spoiled kid who has everything. How's my buddy going? You know, Jay was a great kid. Miss him a lot. Whew. Even now. Anyway, so like I say, after that, I decided that I was going to show the world how pissed off I was and be a spoiled little brat. And that's when the drinking and the drug use started. Wasn't like a social thing after that. You know, before, hey, every kid goes to parties and they drink a few beers and they smoke some weed or whatever. For me, no. Now I was going to consume all I could and just, you know, I'm angry at the world now. Once again, it was my immaturity and me being so spoiled. Anyway, so that stayed with me for a long time. And I'll just start moving along here. So I didn't get into any serious relationships after that. It was always just about drugs and partying. That was it. You know, every night was Friday night for me. It got really bad. Cocaine was such an expensive drug, I had to try to, long story short, we would all kind of pool money together and sell it to certain people so we could get ours much cheaper or for free. Someone turned me in. I went to jail when I was 21 years old. When I was sitting in that jail cell, I remember saying, God, if you get me out of this, I will never sell a drug again. And I haven't since. After this, my family owned a golf course in Maryland. And I worked there. Now I'm going to try to get sober. I worked there, and one day I'm with one of the guys I work with, and I look over at the pool and I see this girl, and she is just like this angel. I mean, beautiful body, you know, everything. And I tell the guy next to me, I said, you see that girl right there? I'm going to marry that girl. Well, I'm used to getting everything I wanted. This girl wanted nothing to do with me. She was a very, very wholesome girl, very proper. And me, you know, I'm wide open and wild. And let me add one more thing. When my friend died, you know, the dream was to be a rock star. And I leaned over in his coffin and I said, I'm going to live every day of the rest of my life as a rock star for both of us. And I certainly tried that, and I still do today, which people think I'm crazy as hell for being in Medellín, Colombia. But once again, he wouldn't be happy with the way my life turned out, of course. But anyway, so here I'm the rock star wannabe, and my future wife wants nothing to do with me. Well, I'm used to getting everything I wanted. Well, the more she didn't want anything to do with me, the more I had to have it. So now my whole life is chasing this woman. It took about a year, but anyway, we finally get together, and yeah, wonderful woman. She gets pregnant at a very young age. She was 18. I think I was 21. And in 1994, my first daughter was born. That moment is when I really learned how to respect women. My wife was very young, very scared to have a child, and her family certainly did not approve of me. It wasn't a good scene, but she stayed the course. But watching her have that child, you know, here's the scared young girl, and watching her have my first daughter, man, I walked out of that hospital knowing what love really was. And respecting women to the fullest. Now, like I say, the only men I ever had in my life were my uncles and my grandfather. But like I say, I got married. We ended up having 3 daughters, no sons. I had a sister, no brothers. My mother, my grandmother. So it was all women. All very affectionate, loving women. And that's when I'll find out later, my wife did not come from that type of a family. Her parents were divorced, and it was one of those things where they used the children to hurt each other. My wife didn't understand. I don't want to say I didn't understand. I did not realize until after I was divorced what the problem in my marriage was. There was a big lack of affection and, the things I was used to. My mother, my grandmother always hugged me, kissed me, I love you. My wife didn't get that. So it wasn't that she didn't love me. She just wasn't capable of the affection that I was used to. But I didn't know that was the problem. I was always like, man, does she even love me or whatever? And she did, and she was so wonderful. And she did her best. Once again, spoiled brat, I want it my way. So I end up, when before Sarah's born, my first daughter, I have way too much to drink on an Easter Sunday. I come home, breaking everything up. The next morning, she's packing. Here she's pregnant, and she's like, I'm not bringing a child into this. And I remember being so hungover, and I was like, look, if you stay, I promise I'll never drink again. She stays. I got sober then for the next 12 years. My whole life, like I say, now I had legal issues. I had the drug issue that I talked about, and then I had 2 DWIs back to back. And that was right in '92 when DWIs were a bad, bad thing. So that's when the golf course became my sanctuary. I stayed there. I didn't go anywhere. I lost my license for a long time. So I lived at the golf when I got married. I met my wife at the golf course. I moved to the golf course. I got married at the golf course. Well, I'm sorry, I had a reception there. So me and my wife and my daughter lived at the golf course. I worked there. It was my sanctuary, kept me out of trouble, kept me sober. My life became, everything was for my wife, my child. Granted, I'm still spoiled. We ended up having 3 daughters, each roughly 5 years apart. My uncle, who introduced me to drugs, at this point, I was doing very well financially. I was very successful as a salesman. Sold cars. Lastly, sold insurance, and I did very, very well at that. And I also picked up poker. In 2003, the World Series of Poker. This nobody moneymaker wins it, and everybody wants to be a poker player, including me. Well, I never played poker in my life. I want to just play in one of these events, ESPN is now a buzz. That's all you see, World Series of Poker. Everybody, even celebrities, movie stars, rock stars, they want to be poker players. Well, my goal was just to play in one of these events. So I'm playing online night and day to try to win one of these trips, because the trips were like $12,500. But for $100, you could play in a tournament. If you win, you get this package. Within 1 month of playing online, I win this trip to Aruba to play in the World Poker Tour, which I thought, wow, man, I get to go to Aruba. I get to play in this tournament. And that was my goal, just to play in one. And if you won on a certain week, you get to play in an extra tournament with Ben Affleck. So the very first time I ever played live poker was in Aruba, which is freaking beautiful. And Ben Affleck is actually sitting next to me. I'm like, well, this is great. Well, it turns out my goal was to play in this tournament. I actually cashed in the tournament. First time ever playing live. I mean, I cashed in this tournament. I'm like, oh, well, wait a minute. I can do this? This is what I want to do. You know, I had no, there's no way I'm going to be a professional poker player. I mean, these people are disciplined and, you know, they disconnect themselves with the money. You know, I can't do any of that. I cashed in this first tournament. Oh, man, that's what I'm going to do. So I play night and day online, and I made a lot of money doing it. I ended up playing in a lot of tournaments, traveling all over the place. I won several trips to Las Vegas to play in certain tournaments. Final tabled one. So being on TV was a little different. Like I said, the first time I was on TV, only because of Ben Affleck, not because of me, but I just happened to be next to him when there's TV cameras everywhere. But then I final tabled a tournament that they televised, and it was very exciting for me, but I did not have the discipline. But man, did I have the drive. This is what I want to do. But I played night and day, and it became a heavy, heavy addiction. I mean, I remember I had 2 very large computer screens, and I literally would have to have my kids bring me my food because I couldn't, you know, this is what I did 24 hours a day. I could not be off that computer for a moment. Anyway, I ended up making a lot of money. Unfortunately, and I won't say the name, but the website that I was on ended up having someone who could see everyone's cards. So everyone now knows this story. So a lot of us who were making a lot of money, all of a sudden we're not just not making a lot of money, we were losing a ton. Now, I wasn't one of the high-level players. Some guys lost, I mean, absolute millions to this super user. I was affected, though, because I was making such good money. I don't want to say it was easy, but I loved doing it. But when this happened, now all of a sudden I'm losing this money, and I'm questioning how I play, because I was actually getting pretty decent at the game, and now I'm questioning, oh my God, do I even know what the hell I'm doing? I'm losing all this money. Anyway, all that comes to light. A few years later, you know, they outlaw online poker. So now every day I'm in Atlantic City, basically. I would spend like a week at a time in Atlantic City at the Taj Mahal. I was making an incredible living for someone who just sat back playing cards. And it wasn't gambling to me at that point. I was playing strictly math and being able to read people. And I was, you know, I wasn't making, oh shit. I wasn't making incredible money, but I was making more than most people make at a decent job. Here, you want to just, okay, sorry. Sorry about that. Anyway, so poker became my livelihood. And once again, it goes back to the whole rock star thing. Anyway, now around this time, drugs are going to re-enter my life. I'll be a little vague. Once again, I have everything. Now I've got money, cars, I've got 2 houses. I build this big, beautiful dream house. Beautiful home. You know, I've got these fancy cars and I've got all this money. And I don't even have a regular job. I play poker. I mean, what more could you ask for? Well, not enough for me. So now drugs re-enter my life. For 1 week, I was with my uncle and another family member, thinking I'm just having a party, and I had plenty of money in the bank, so I wasn't affected by the money. The following Monday, 7 a.m., I'm supposed to be somewhere, and I said, man, I'm going to get more drugs. And I knew right then I was in trouble. And for the next 20 years, that's what it was every day. I've been to rehab several times. Clearly caused a problem. Sandy! Caused a problem in my marriage, my children. Even to this day, they don't have contact with me because of this. They think, I believe that their thought is I didn't love them enough. I didn't care about them enough. I wanted to go out. drugs were only a party for me for about a week. The last 20 some years have been very, very dark. And like I said, I've been to rehab several times. I've been to several sober living, several, meetings, if you will. And I never could have long-standing sobriety because I wasn't willing to do it 100%. The rehabs were always the wrong reason. Oh, your wife wants you to go, your mom wants you to go, your kids want you to go, or I never really wanted it for me. Or I'd go because I'm in debt or I'm in trouble or whatever. A few years ago, I actually divorced my wife. My wife was a wonderful, wonderful person. You know, how does someone know how to react to someone who becomes a drug addict all of a sudden after being sober the whole marriage and children and, you know, this great little life? My wife was never going to leave me. And of course, I was making her miserable. Miserable. And she didn't deserve that. In my selfishness, there was some unselfishness in divorcing her because I wanted her to be happy. She deserved it. And she never would have been happy again because at this point I know that I'm not going to beat this thing. I'm too weak, and you know, to get sober for a little bit and go to rehab and then go back to using drugs is so defeating. You know, it's worse than admitting, hey, I'm a drug addict. You know, you get a little sober and you're like, yeah, man, everything's great, pink cloud. And when you fail, oh, man, for me, it defeats too much. Most of my drug use has been I mean, I'm not saying that I'm not guilty because I certainly am. I made that choice. It's a wall for me. I don't have to feel the guilt and shame I feel over what I did to my wife, my children, my mother, my grandmother. When I get sober and I feel that, it's tough. It's tough. And like I say, I think my children think I just didn't love them, or you know, that I'm off having this party. No, it was never that way. It was I had one. The doctor from the Naval Academy was the chief physician at one of the rehabs, and he told me, he says, you know, you're not a drug addict. And I said, this is my 5th rehab. What are you talking about? He says, no. He says, you're using that drug as a mood stabilizer. Like, holy moly, this guy's known me for 5 minutes, and everything he said was correct. And that was the truth. I've never been able to take medication, prescribed medication. It always has an adverse effect on me. There's very little I've liked about using drugs, other than the fact that it doesn't make me feel. I don't care. Don't care about my wife. Don't care about my kids. My wife and kids were everything to me. It was me I don't care about, and that's still true to this day. You know, my ex-wife has now found happiness again, and I'm glad. You know, like I say, I couldn't have asked for a better wife, and there was. Yeah, you know, in this life, you get married one time, and that was it. And I can't be more blessed that she's the mother of my 3 children. Are wonderful, despite that they don't contact me. I still love my children just as much as the day they were born. I'm very proud of them. My oldest daughter just had my first grandchild, first boy in our family, and it's all women and first boy. I've only seen a couple pictures. Of course, he's perfect. And I couldn't be more happy. She's in the United States military. You know, thank you for your service. I don't regret. I don't want to say I don't regret, but a lot of things I don't regret because my my kids being here was, the one good thing I did, regardless of what happened. I think there's maybe a little confusion on how much I love these children and what I would do for them back when I was sober and even the beginning of my real downfall with drugs. I did everything that I could, spoil them, and my wife tried to hide as much of it as we could. The oldest one knew. Sarah knew right away. We all held it from the two smaller ones. But anyway, I love my children very much. I love my wife very much, and I'm glad I just heard she got remarried. I mean, she's with a great guy. He loves her very much, just like I did. So, it's good to my kids. I can't ask for more, I'm very happy for the both of them. My children have, been out of contact and in contact here and there. It's very hard. There's only one of them that does not have me blocked on any kind of social media. She reads the messages but does not respond. My hope is one day they'll return. My time is obviously getting much shorter. I'm 55 years old, and my health is certainly failing. I'm down probably 80 pounds since I moved here to Medellín, which was strictly a financial decision. And that's what my life is. Unfortunately, I'm not in charge of my life. Like I said, I don't want to get too detailed. I don't want to glamorize or, war story. This is what I do, and da 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 da. Medellín is a very beautiful place. It's certainly not the how it's portrayed in our media in the United States is not that way. I mean, a crack house in Baltimore, Maryland is more dangerous than this place. It's very beautiful here. Not real gringo friendly, but I didn't come here for friends. Like I say, I'm not in charge of my life, and I'll just leave it at that. I've been in Medellín for just over 3 years. My grandmother loved me, as much as you could love somebody, just as my mother does. She passed away at 97 years old. One of the reasons I moved to Medellín, Colombia was, my mother and my grandmother saw me all day, every day, destroying myself. And of course, making their lives hell as well. Money. And my mother and my grandmother never were really able to tell me no. My mother will tell this story. If you tell she says, you might as well give Kevin what he wants. Because if you tell him no, he's just going to keep asking you in different ways until you say yes. I've certainly used that to my advantage. Even to this day, although my mother is not here to see it, I'm still making her life very, very difficult. I'm still that spoiled child. I'm 55 years old. My mother loves me more than you can love somebody, and anyway. So that's where I am now. Like I said, I live in Medellín, Colombia. I don't have plans to return to the United States at this time. There are a few things that could maybe possibly happen one day that would make me return. But as of this day, there's no plans to return. It's not that I love Medellín, Colombia. Unfortunately, with my dependency, doesn't matter the country. The only thing different are the faces and the names. Everything else, bendiga. Pardon. Like I say, the faces and the names are different, but it's always the same. Same people that are in Baltimore, Maryland, or here in Medellín, Colombia, or Tijuana, Mexico, or wherever else I go. But that's the short story. So one day, if you got about 2 hours, we'll do the long. Any more questions from you now?
That was
Informative.
informative, and touching.
Yeah.
Man, Kevin, I appreciate you sitting down and sharing your story.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Maybe we can follow it up one day with some better news.
Indeed.
All right.
Thanks for your time, man.
Thank you.